Good evening, everybody. I'm Linda Kuhn. I'm Dean of the Honors College, and I'd like to thank you all for attending our sneak preview of the Spring 2022 Honors College Trajectory Seminar, Inspired, featuring Sandy Edwards, Senior Director of the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. Tonight, we're bringing together the director, Edwards, along with Professor of Theater Amy Herzberg, and an incredibly talented quartet of students who took Inspired this past spring and will share their experiences. And since I know we have a lot of students on the line, that will be super compelling, I believe. So my task tonight is to introduce our guest of honor, and that's the Senior Director of the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, Sandy Edwards, and then Sandy will introduce the rest of the panel, and then we will get rolling. So what can I say about Sandy Edwards? Well, that's why you're here, and a lot of people are here. Well known at the University of Arkansas as the reigning diva of philanthropy, also known by our competitors at the Penn State Honors College for jumpstarting another impressive flagship land-grant honors college in the United States, pivoting to the performing arts and to the fine arts, and totally making a huge difference in this region and beyond by taking up philanthropy and administration in a museum. And for the Honors College, this is going to be the third class. Woo! Lucky us. The director, Edwards, has actually taught for us. The first was the super crazy and experiential museum, which invited 12 honor students to sit at the senior executive room table of Crystal Bridges and learn the art of running a museum. That was pretty crazy. To last spring's amazing Inspired, which is dedicated to the creative process. So we are super happy to have Sandy back for round 3, so our students can continue to benefit Inspired Redux Spring 2022. So I'm going to turn the mic over to the Senior Director of the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, Sandy Edwards. Take it away.
Thank you, Dean. What a terrific introduction, and I love the energy, and may we all keep that energy up throughout the coming hour. Thank you first for asking us to preview this, and before we go any further, I do want to introduce these wonderful, beautiful minds that are joining us, who are students currently and who were students in our course last semester. So raise your hand when I call your name out. Benjamin Burtis, Ben Burtis, honors mechanical engineering, German major with a minor in computer engineering. Ben's all about robotics. Just a delight. Ben, thank you for joining us again tonight. Maria Cervantes, there you are, Maria, honors fashion apparel, and she might maybe give us an insight into why she has chosen the major of fashion apparel. And then we have Claire Hutchinson, who represents what some people would more classically think about as the creative major, honors in creative writing and history. And we look forward to hearing from you, Claire. Thank you again for agreeing to be here tonight. And then Trinity Robinson. Trinity is not only an honors computer science and mathematics major, but she's also now minoring in music, and she may tell us a little bit what motivated her to do that. And I am just also delighted to not only have my colleague, but my good friend, one of our noble faculty members, the Distinguished Professor of Theater, Associate Artistic Director of Theater Squared, Amy Herzberg, with us. And there you are, Amy. When I asked Amy if she would participate. She said, well, I've never done anything like that, but why not? And she ended up having just a brilliant session, which we're going to tell you about. So this next session starts off the first 8 weeks of the spring semester. It will be every Tuesday evening at Theater Square. So I want to thank every one of our friends at Theater Square for understanding how wonderful it is to use that beautiful new building as a place of learning. So we appreciate that. Amy, please give our thanks and kudos to your team there. This last year, we met by Zoom, which added another challenge, if you will, to the experience of getting to know one another. But I will tell you, these 4 students, exceptional students, and their co-students brought it. And I would almost say to a person, the screen disappeared. By the end of 8 weeks, we felt, I think, as though we had not only known one another, but shared some remarkable experiences. So I wanted to just kind of give you an idea about what this is all about. I've had the very good fortune in my lifetime of spending what most consider time in the creative environment, which includes, as the dean mentioned, music, theater, dance, and the visual arts. But that is just a slice of how creativity manifests. Quite frankly, through my experience, I've come to realize that everyone is creative. From the generation of the idea to the realization of it, creativity is simply a part of everyday life. So this seminar is designed for participants to recognize their specific brand of creativity and to really make it sing. So all of us are creative. All of us notice this throughout the day in various ways, and we all have a unique brand of creativity. So also, our university is a hotbed of creativity, and we are mining part of that as this process. And what better way to do that than to learn through others' personal experience? So 6 of the weeks are dedicated to highlighting these wonderful creatives on our campus, from music to architecture to business to theater, as Amy represented. And what we have done, which I think is not only unique, but very compelling for our students, because this is really, first and foremost, a student journey into discovering their own creative process. But how better to do that than to listen to creatives talk about their process and understand that it is by recognizing what others people do that sometimes we get in touch with our own selves. So what we asked 6 different faculty to do was to consider another peer creative and to spend an hour talking about their way in which they uniquely approach their art. Or their creative spirit, let's say that. Most of them are artists by profession or have some type of work that has been leveraged on the creative spirit, but it's really not about how they make things, but how they go about determining and playing into that muse, how they make that come alive. And so that was, I think, compelling for all of us. How often do we get the opportunity to sit down and listen to a world-class architect or world-class designers talk about their process? And many times they shared with us that they don't talk about it. And so for many of them, they were revealing to us things that they had never really expressed. And we felt that this was really wonderful for our students. And our goal ultimately is for the students to leave class with a new or improved version of their best creative selves. So that's the course, if you will. And the way in which they got into the course, these 4 that we're featuring tonight, was that we asked them for a qualifying essay. And they had to answer the question, what is your definition of creativity? And what role does creativity play in your life today? We had a wonderful time reading these essays. They were all just would blow your minds, each coming from a different direction and reinforcing to us that the creative spirit is indeed unique. Before I go any further, I want to give great props to my co-creator and my co-leader last year, Margie Conrads, my friend and colleague. Yes, thumbs up for Margie, who has sadly for me and all of us announced her resignation from Crystal Bridges, so she won't be joining us second semester. I'll feel as though a part of me is not with this program, but we will soldier on. She has done a great job in giving us a terrific template. So before we go any further into the evening, I want to begin by giving the floor to our four students. And I'm going to start with you, Trinity. I really would like to know what motivated you to sign up for Inspired during spring of 2021. And when you're finished letting us know your insights, let's just popcorn it to the rest of the students.
Yeah, so for me, when it came to signing up for this class, I was really wanting something that would allow me to grow as a person, especially with my background of computer science. Creativity really isn't something that's emphasized, and I really didn't feel like I was capable of being creative before taking the course. So I just really wanted to challenge myself and be able to grow in different aspects. And actually, by the end of the class, I ended up adding a music minor, which is something that I'd been considering beforehand, but I was like, no, I don't really think I can do this. But after taking the course, it really inspired me to add that to my study plan. So I will pass it on to Maria.
So actually, I kind of had around the same thing. At the beginning of I guess like spring 2021, I was a finance supply chain double major. So, that doesn't really allow for like a lot of creativity. But I decided to take Inspired because it would have been like, I guess like my fun class for the semester. And towards the end of it, it also inspired me to change my major, like absolutely, like completely. And now I'm an apparel merchandising major, which is literally the opposite of finance and supply chain. So this course really aided me and like gave me the push that I needed to change my major. And I give the speaker to Benjamin.
Awesome. I apologize if I sound like a robot. They're repairing my internet right now. But I think going into the semester, I was kind of like Trinity, that I was kind of in this really rigid major of mechanical engineering. So there's lots of math, lots of science, lots of like really rigid formulas. And I was looking at doing lots of CAD work where I need to be creative. I need to come up with solutions that are kind of out of left field. So I was looking for a way to kind of systematically add on to that, to kind of make myself more creative without, I guess, in a structured way. That makes sense. So I guess I'll pass it on to Claire.
Yeah, so I am from a traditionally creative field. And Dean Kuhn actually came to me letting me know that this class was available because she thought it would be something that would interest me, and it did very much. What really got me with the class was that we were hearing and learning from like professional creatives, which isn't something I feel like you tend to ever get with a lot of classes, at least, is it all seems so vague and like farther away than it actually is. And so getting to like talk to and hear the processes of people who are doing creative work in creative fields was like really intriguing and a fantastic part of this course.
Thank you. Trinity, I want to mine a little further your love of music, because I remember you mentioned music early on in our first class when we were talking about things that you might enjoy. What do you hope to gain from having this music minor?
I'm just really wanting to have a better understanding of music and just wanting to be able to analyze music and also be able to create my own eventually. So just really wanting to have a more formal background with music, right? Because I'm just self-taught up until this point. So I just want a stronger foundation moving forward.
That's great. And Maria, I know that business will play an important role in your success as a designer. But I remember during one course of one of our classes when you said that you have a family of business people. You seem to have a foundation or a circle of love, if you will, of people who can help you be successful from a business perspective, but you're the only one who could design. So did your family expectation perhaps was that business would be what would make you successful, but you feel that the design field is where you need to spend your time?
Yeah, so I come from a very like traditional family. So it was like go to college for like be a doctor, engineer. Like I have doctors, engineers, and like business people in my family. So the fact that I want to go into, I guess, like a more like creative field was a little bit difficult, but I think that they understand that it's like what I want to do. So it's like perfect for me. It makes sense to me and to them.
That's great. I think in the and for them is an important resolution, right? Because you had to go through that process of not only making the decision for yourself, but also bringing your stakeholders along in what might have seemed to be a difficult decision for them. So I'm glad there's that resolution. And Ben, you talk about creativity within a certain structure. Do you feel as though this achieved that you can now approach the work that you want to with your CAD drawings, et cetera, with a little more freedom and a little more understanding about how to be more creative?
I think it does. I think the structure part is important in a more, what's the word? Like in a more creative field, I think the structure is important. And it was given to me in like, I guess my new college. So it allows me, like I understand like the backgrounds and the everything else, like the science of the textile production and everything. So it helps me to kind of like freely express the creative side.
Great, thank you. And Ben, how about you? You were looking for something very specific. You admit that you work in a structured environment. You love robotics. You often made analogies to the things that you were hoping to achieve as you anthropomorphized, if I might say, your robots. Did this help you achieve that, what you were trying to reach?
Yeah, for sure. I think just having the space to think about how this is the same as a creative field. Like I'm doing the same kind of, it's very different, right? But it's also like the same thing as making music or the same thing as making art. It's just a more structured environment. So I think this really helped me in realizing that I don't have to be as rigid. I can throw something onto a canvas or into a CAD program and still and come out with a better product if I kind of take a more creative or like sketchy approach to things.
Good, good. So Claire, let's line up a new line of thinking here. At what point in this semester did you gain clarity about your own type of creativity?
Honestly, for me, it was pretty early on in the semester, because some of the first couple weeks we had a lot of discussion on like hesitancy and like the fear of sharing something new and things like that, which is really like deeply for me was something that like I struggled with needing to have a good, fully formed, finished product before I was comfortable presenting anything to anyone. And so the clarity of like sometimes things don't need to be perfectly polished and like 3 levels ahead, you know, sort of thing, like just that sometimes simple answers or straightforward answers or like sketches are just as important and just as revealing as a final product can be.
That
So
messy is okay, right? That messy
yeah,
is part of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was one, I think it might have been a TED Talk that we watched for class at some point, where the presenter was talking about allowing himself to be a fool. And I remember that was just like the first or second week of class. And that was something that I carried through the entire semester. And even now, I'm sometimes like, it might sound like a dumb idea, but it's something new and something I haven't done yet. And so I might as well try it and see how it goes. So that was, yeah, that was a big thing for me with this. Ben?
Yeah, I think I have a really like similar approach. I really my favorite thing to do like after this class is to be in these engineering meetings with people who are way smarter than me that have like a whole, you know, course load above me, like who are in their PhD programs, but I can suggest a really simple or a kind of dumb approach that might they like is completely just went under their kind of like PhD level thinking. And I think that's a really awesome approach because I can make myself kind of the fool where it might be a really dumb idea or it might be like the best idea that we could come up with for this solution. So kind of going along that path of being the dumbest one in the room if I have to be. I guess I'll popcorn to Maria.
Well, I think the most important thing was obviously being like someone who was in such a like rigorous like finance supply chain, like this is how you do it and there's no other way to do it, kind of set like you didn't have much of like an opportunity to fail, like Claire said, and like making a mess was like okay. Like today in one of my classes I literally came out like full of yarn, like it was, and that part was like the most important part to me because it was like making a mess is okay because I finished something great that I needed to finish. And I think that's like the best part that I got out of like being a fool. And I can go to Trinity.
I'd say for me, the turning point in the class, it really caught me off guard was whenever we watched the Theater Squared production, Schoolgirls or the African Mean Girls play. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it. So like after I watched the production after class, I didn't really have much of a background on theater that I realized that I realized there was like a lot of similarities between theater and programming with like a lot of the process of like, you know, all the groundwork that you have to do and like how you can take the same thing, like the same play, for example, and you can really make it your own rather than just, you know, sticking to like really just sticking to the script. And I'd say that really caught me off guard that I was like, wow, like theater and programming, like who would have thought that I could see similarities in between the two? So that was whenever my eyes were really open within the class, and it was just a really good experience.
That's great, Trinity. I really appreciate that. I will say that one of the things we realized, and this was a thread, as Claire said, through the entire course, is that honors college students tend to want to make everything kind of perfect and have it come out fully shaped and formed before they show people. And I think creative after creative of the professionals would say that where the learning occurred was from the idea and the process of getting to that final state. And so that whole idea of messy and these comparisons, Trinity, that you found were, I think, the ahas for me and what made it so much fun. And I love, Trinity, that you picked out the schoolgirls, or the African Mean Girls play, one of the things we wanted the students to do was to attend a performance. And of course, they attended a Zoom performance, an online performance of this play that Amy was very specifically involved in. And then Amy followed it up with an interview with the director, who is Vicki Washington. And Amy, I would love it if you would be able to talk about your creative process in not only preparing for the interview with Vicki, but what you learned as you were going through this and what you may have learned from the students who were asking you questions.
Well, first of all, it is amazing how much thinking about creativity brings on more creativity. And so I felt like after, Sandy, after you asked me to do this, and after I did have this session with your class, I actually left feeling like I was a newer and better creative self. I did, for having examined it. I mean, I am creative a lot of every single day. It's my job as a theater artist and a director and an actor, and there's my cat meowing in the background. So, having this idea of interviewing a different artist, because I could tell you like that, oh, this is how I direct a play, this is the process I go through, but actually having to step out and think about creativity and where creativity comes from and what are the things that spark that and how is that process really different and sort of unknown for, you know, artists in a certain sort of way, and giving into that messiness. Oh, Claire, what you said. That's right. That is a lesson I have to keep learning all the time. And so I really appreciate that you said that. And this course, you know, inspires that. So for me, going and really thinking about the very basics of not just my process in theater, but what does creativity mean? And finding the questions to ask of this amazing theater artist, Vicki Washington, who directed Mean Girls, and who in fact is going to be directing Mountaintop by Katori Hall at Theater Squared, which I think might be on the docket for this next class and seeing it. She's just an amazing theater artist, and getting to really dive into her process, both in the kind of micro way and in the macro way, because actually I remember I was so nervous about this and I called Sandy beforehand. I was like, okay, Sandy, here are the questions that I have. And she was like, these are great. Think about this too, because they were all sort of in the micro. And Sandy encouraged looking at it in a bigger way. And that was actually really terrific for me personally, because it caused me to step back and look at something that I don't actually ever really look at in my own work. I am creative, but the very fact of taking a step back and asking what that means and how that really lives in my life brought about a kind of new level of work for me. It was really exciting, just to say. And you all had a whole semester with her, so it must be amazing. I was like, I have to start coming back to this class really every day.
So I thought it was, thank you. I thought it was interesting, Amy, that Vicki said that she approaches it with a certain broad picture in mind. She knows what she wants to do, she thinks. And then within that, she has to give herself permission as she's directing to go with the flow, to understand the actors and things like that. So I was surprised at how flexible she was when in the whole, she seemed to be very, not rigid, but very confident and determined about when she hears a play or reads the play, she pretty much knows what she wants to do. So it's that combination of being very confident and having a vision, but allowing that collaboration. She kept talking about collaboration being a very important part of it.
Definitely. I think that for myself, I will research and go in there and analyze to within an inch of a play's life, you know, and I will get that down. And if I do not do that early enough to then give myself room to step away and dream about it and just let images happen. I do what I call the Chagall exercise, which is just putting a character into, the atmosphere and seeing what floats by them. You know what I mean? And allowing that kind of a process to happen, the not knowing process, the not perfectly finished process, the messiness that you've all been talking about. That is where I think the kind of the truth of the piece finally winds up coming from something sort of deeper than yourself. And then in theater, it is a collaborative art form. And so you're not just inviting your own creativity, but you're trying to create an environment where every single person's creative ideas at their best and their deepest are going to be welcome in the room, because all of those ideas together is what winds up making theater happen. And when you don't give that air and that space and that trust, even though it's terrifying sometimes to give it those things, but when you do, it always pays off 100% of the time. So yeah.
That's great. On the spot, may I ask that you interview Vicki again this year for this class?
I would love to. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And continue, Amy, to contribute as we move on to this next one, because I think then I'd like to know about your post-inspired consciousness of the role that creativity is playing in your life. So you went through this course, but it would be great if you could tell us again whether you carried into this semester that idea of sitting back and maybe having this kernel of an idea that you want to throw out. Is it about the timing of it? Is it about just giving yourself permission to share? What are some things that maybe after the course you've been able to integrate into your student life and maybe even your personal life?
Yeah, I think the interview with Vicki Washington had a really big impact on me, because she talked about like more so than planning and being creative, it's about trusting the process and throwing yourself into it and giving it your all, but just trusting that you'll get there along the way. So over the summer with my, I did an REU experience where I was working on robots, and instead of trying to like stare at a blank sheet of paper and try to force creativity to come out of it, I just kind of followed that advice of trusting the process and following it through, and kind of trusting that I'll make my way through by just kind of iterating as I go. So that's really, that idea has really kind of followed me through this class. And I'll popcorn it to Trinity.
For me, after this class, I noticed myself just trying more things and just thinking more outside the box, especially when it came to music. I would, like previously, I would really just like learn a song and just learn it like as is. But then I realized, you know what? Well, let me try adding something and like see how this turns out. I found myself doing that a lot more. And then I found out a lot of cool things that I didn't realize I was capable of doing, and I never would have found out had I not thought outside the box. And yeah, that's just like the main thing with music. And even with my programming, with my internship this summer, a big thing we had to do was like fix bugs. And like looking on the outside, you're like, oh, there's no creativity involved with that. You just see what's wrong with the application and you fix it. But no, like I had to, really dig through and find like the root of the issue that was caused and think, well, what's the way that I can fix this to where, it'll get the desired functionality while also maintaining like the rest of the application. Like I didn't want to fix one thing and break everything else. So as a result, I had to get really creative sometimes when it came to fixing things. So yeah, I'd just say that post this course, I just found myself thinking outside the box a bit more.
I love that you found your voice. I mean, literally found your voice, that when you're singing, you're allowing yourself to really hear Trinity. I think that is very cool. So I'll look forward to that next place where you're willing to share your voice. Yeah. Maria, what about you?
I think mine's a bit more straightforward, but I actually started doing more like creative, I guess, designs I haven't actually been able to like have the time to sit down and actually like do them, but I started keeping a journal of all the things that I hope to eventually make. And I think that it's helped me, like, I guess, put myself first in terms of creativity instead of thinking about life as just like getting a degree and graduating and getting money, and thinking of it more as like this like process of um, like, I guess, happiness. I don't know if that's like a really corny way to explain it, but like I started getting into shoes a lot because I began listening to what I wanted to like look at instead of what I thought I needed to. And I can give it to Claire.
Yeah, so I graduated in May, which not having classes anymore has really kind of, I'm just in a new place in life that I've never experienced before, and I'm rolling with that. And so one of those things is I don't have the same kind of pressure. I don't feel the same kind of pressure that I used to when it comes to creativity, which has allowed me to embrace doing like new and experimental things, or even falling back on more traditional stuff. Like during my during the spring semester when I was taking Inspired, at one point when I was doing my poetry thesis, I was at a point where I was trying to do this really rigidly structured poem, and I could not get this third verse to fit. And in just filler, I put in some letter spam that I was like, I'll get back to this later, and then send it to my thesis advisor like that. And his response was, get rid of everything else. I'm interested in this, and seeing how this will work as a poem is just like that kind of letter spam. And so we like broke it all the way down to that and let the title do most of the work, and then have the impact of that incoherence as the poem itself. And then like the year prior to that, in 2019, I did a zine project. Every single month I was producing a zine. And in January, like my very first zine was just watercolor and pencil and Sharpie and like really bare bones stuff. And if you look at it, you can see like the erased sketches underneath everything. And it was very raw in that sense. And then throughout the year, I felt myself I was giving myself more and more pressure to make these polished and like really unique and like gorgeous designs for zines, which are supposed to be simple and accessible and art, but in a raw way. And so getting back to that and getting into the what is creativity for me, it's something very messy and something that starts out so sketchy, and it's okay to polish it in a way that I'm not expecting it to be polished. And so since then, now I have been giving myself less of that pressure, because I don't have necessarily an immediate audience that I'm giving things to, but also because I've been allowed and realized that I don't need to put that pressure on myself outside of that, and that sometimes those unexpected things are where the best creativity is going to come from.
That's wonderful, Claire. I remember one of the classes in the course where we had people talking about the muse that would come to you, right? And I think everyone understands that the more you're open to that process, the more that you can allow these ideas to come. And Amy, I could just feel you when Trinity was talking that you wanted to go, you go girl. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about what they've just shared with us, because these are some pretty exceptional awarenesses, and the fact that they're integrated now into their life really, I think, speaks to both of us. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Well, I mean, the first thought that I have is that I wish that I had access to these kinds of ideas and this kind of encouragement to just allow and see what is there, because I think that it is at the core, I know that we've all been saying this, of creativity. And I'm so excited to hear about these changes and these expansions in your lives because of that. And it's funny, I question, I mean, I think I was destined to wind up in theater, but I started college as a piano performance major. You know, I would practice 8 hours a day in my tiny little, you know, room. And if a note was wrong, the piece had to be thrown out, you know. And I now think that had I often wonder if I had had these kinds of ideas, and if I'd had a different process, and if I had seen it as much more creative than I did, maybe that would still be where I'm at. I'm just so excited and impressed with the way that you've all embraced this and incorporated it into your lives and into even your daily lives. That is such a really terrific achievement. And I don't think it's so simple, because I think that, you know, letting go and giving into messy and giving into not knowing is an extraordinary thing.
Thank you. So I think everyone who's listening in, and we are so delighted each and every one of you is here tonight. I see a lot of familiar names on the screen. I think you understand why every class had its mic drop moment, where these wonderful awarenesses were just beautifully shared, and we all grew in the process. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions if there are, or if anybody would like to just share. This is a big sharesy group. That's the whole point of creativity. So I'll just rely on our host this evening to let us know if there are any questions.
All right, turn the Q&A over to Dr. John Treat of the Honors College, and y'all can put your questions in the chat, or you can bravely come on camera, unmute, and ask them directly. So take it away, John.
What a fantastic session tonight. Just hearing how everyone benefited from the class, it was absolutely amazing. So do we have any questions from the audience? You can type your question into the chat, or please feel free to unmute and turn on your video and ask your question live and in person. I think everyone is a little intimidated. I know that I am. Is my question going to be creative enough?
No bad questions for sure.
I always try to have, oh, here we have one. For a staffer who would not be able to take this wonderful class, what do you suggest for feeding the muse?
Well, I can say taking time, taking quiet time. I think we all get so caught up in our day-to-day experience. One of the conventional wisdoms that came out from the people that were testifying, witnessing, if you will as a lot of the materials we read, said that you really do need to take time and to listen to yourself, and to not force. I think that is the thing. We were saying some of the tips tonight: allow yourself to have the process be messy, and to just take time and listen and take the pressure off to produce. I think I see Maria nodding. Pressure, I think, for everyone to produce is a big thing. So trusting that it's going to turn out and allowing space within that process for the serendipity is a good thing.
Ethan Kaufman is asking, what are some of the hardest parts of listening to yourself?
Let's open that up to the panel. Claire, I think you've talked about that before. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. I guess a lot, like the hardest part is taking away, I think, the logic side of things, like, because creativity isn't always the most logical thing. It's not always, like, doesn't always make sense. And for me, something I've always really struggled with is being almost on the pessimistic side of realism, of being like, okay, but like how feasible is this actually? How well are you actually going to be able to execute that idea? Is that something that you are talented enough to convey? And the answer is like, you just sometimes have to throw that out the window and just be like, what is the harm in trying anyway, trying something new and putting your skill to the test to try to convey something or creatively like get something done. You don't know until you've done it. And so one of the hardest parts for me is turning off the little voice that's like, but how well are you going to actually get that done? Because the answer is I won't know until I do it. So
We have a question from Sean, specifically for Sandy, that says, what role does creativity play in your role as a manager at Crystal Bridges?
Oh, I love that question. And I think it plays a lot to Claire's assertion that if you continue to try to do things the way they've been done, because there's a logical sequence to it, you lose out on the opportunity to try something new. So I do think the role creativity plays in my work in management is to not fall into that trap of best practice or the thing that might be known to make something happen. How can we turn something and make it counterintuitive? How can you open up the conversation, or more importantly, seek advice of others, not try to be the one who has the answers because of either your role that you play or the time that you've been on the job. Get new input into the room. We're often challenging ourselves to integrate, if you will, new voices, new perspective. And through that, usually somebody has a better idea, or at least a different idea that takes the conversation in another direction. So I would say not rely on yourself, seek the advice of others, expand your circle, and be open for change. And yeah, let's throw that messy in there too. I think a lot of times we're really hard on ourselves and we don't allow for the messy.
This one is for the group, but it is a perfect follow-up to your answer, Sandy. It says, what tips might everyone be able to share about being open to feedback? And how does one teach this so that learners see it as a gift? How do learners open up to what their instructor or peer is sharing? Ooh, that's a hard one.
Oh, come on.
I think I can answer this one. Well, feedback is always hard because I think at most of the time, especially when it's a creative outlet, and people give like an opinion on what you made or what you are making, it can seem as like, oh, they're working against me and they don't want me to win. When in reality, most of the time, like creativity comes in like a group setting. Feedback is necessary for creativity to flourish because everyone has their own opinions about like what they like to see, what they don't like to see. And when you come to like fruition with something that everyone or like most people like to see, it will end up being something that like you towards the end will be really, really proud of. Even though you should never like completely change your form of creativity to appeal to the I guess the majority, but it's always necessary to I guess learn from other people because every perspective is necessary in a creative sense.
All right. Is there anyone who'd like to unmute and ask a question live? I see lots of lively minds out there in the chat. We have a special thank you to Maria from Gretchen who asked the question. That was a great answer. Dean Kuhn, you're always good at questions. Something occurred to you that you'd like to ask the group?
Well, why not? From wacky Dean land, one thing I heard from the undergraduates and recent graduate is that certain disciplines either are or perceived to be as very rigid and super structured. Any kind of a creative way you can imagine that this could be sort of either changed, or at least the message might be there that you could have more freedom and creativity. I mean, I'm a medieval historian, but to me, engineering seems like an obvious place for creativity, right? I mean, like super creativity. And yet it sounds like some of the messaging is that, at least among the students, is that it isn't. So, I mean, finance, I don't know, I give you, but I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is going into like a lot of my weird beliefs on the curriculum, but we're teaching engineering so that you can pass a test right now. And I feel like if you're going to teach engineering effectively, so you can make more passionate and engineers that can kind of make the world a better place, you should be teaching it as a process to make the world a better place, right? So teaching it, instead of you're going through this set of thermo equations, you're using these thermo equations to, I don't know, to make a better solar panel array, or just more project-based, more collaborative, more kind of assessing the learning and assessing the learner's participation in it, rather than their ability to fill in bubbles on a test or write an equation or memorize something. So I think engineering, when it's applied, when you get into the industry, can be a really awesome, fulfilling, and creative process. But in some ways, how it's taught can be kind of rigid.
Yeah, I agree with Benjamin, especially early on in engineering. You're not really learning how to apply all that you're learning. You're just taught, hey, this is important. You have to know this, but you're never shown where you're actually going to apply it. So in the beginning stages, it oftentimes seems kind of pointless. And it honestly leaves a lot of people feeling discouraged, because they're like, well, I don't see the point in this. I'm never going to use it. Like, I don't need it. But I feel like if like, especially in the earlier stages, if there's more of an emphasis on application and saying, oh, well, here's how you use this equation, or here's how you can use what we're learning in a real way, and like, this is like the cool stuff you can do with it, and you can think outside the box with it, that'll really make engineering seem more appealing, and as a way for people to view it as a creative outlet rather than just humanities, for example, because there are a lot of opportunities for creativity in engineering. It's just they're not really emphasized or explored, especially like I mentioned in the beginning stages.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Let me ask one question as our curriculum person at the Honors College in way of coming attractions. Sandy, what are you most excited about in the coming semester for this new round of the class?
I think we're going to gather in person, which is going to be, I think, a different type of chemistry. And I'm excited about that. I believe that this group of students this past year told us the things that resonated with them. And so I think they were the beta group, if you will. They were the test group, and we're going to take the best things that they found most applicable, and we're just going to expand on them. So we're going to keep with the faculty. As you just heard, Amy just signed up. We're going to keep with the faculty, these wonderful creative faculty interviews, and we hope to just get a great group of students. What I'm excited about most, John, sincerely, is that it's the students who bring the wow to this. We can have the best faculty, we can have the best TED Talks and wonderful motivational readings, but it's the students who bring their experiences you've just seen. I mean, it doesn't get much better than these four, except they have other classmates who were also disengaged. So what I'm most excited about, the next group, and continuing the conversation with this group.
Well, looking at tonight's response, this may be the hottest ticket on the Honors College spring lineup. So I think that you're going to have plenty of interest and hopefully another brilliant group. Here's one more. It says, if I could only have one something to help my students embrace the creative, what should I do? And or how do we help our students, or how does an instructor encourage them to step out and go for it?
I think I have a perspective on this. I went to a project-based high school, so the way we demonstrated learning instead of taking tests was to make a presentation or make a documentary or make a piece of music. So I think, I don't know what subject you teach, but opening it up so that the demonstration of learning can be something that's really applicable to that student, that they can show it in a way that they're excited about. And that is the way that you harness the creativity, that when they're excited about it, they're going to put so much more effort and creative thinking into that process. So just making it so that they can be excited about it, take ownership.
It's a great
Pretty
answer.
good.
Anyone else?
I had a professor that I took a couple classes with throughout my undergrad career, and the way that she encouraged us to interact more creatively with the subject was that for our finals, we had the option of doing a research paper, like a 10 to 20 page research paper, or on the same scale, a creative project that you could do something hands-on that had to do with the subject. And that definitely was up my alley when I took those classes with her. And so I also always thought that that was like the coolest thing, because she was one of the first professors I had my freshman year too. And so going into that and being like, wait, after all of my high school career of being very essays oriented and tests and everything, having professors who open up the avenue of a creative project instead of, because it's still research based, but you have the opportunity to play with your research in a new medium and a medium of your choice. And so that was like a really cool thing and really encouraging. And a lot of students took advantage of that with really cool results. Like, it certainly was not any kind of cop out in comparison to a research paper. And so you got to see a lot of people doing a lot of really interesting things with a topic that otherwise would have only ever been done in research papers. And so incorporating a way where students have the option to do a creative project as an alternative might be something to look into.
Great idea. Anyone else? We have time for maybe one more question, if there's still one out there. I think the summary comment is in the chat says, this has been, wow, all caps, amazing.
Oh, good.
And
Good,
I
good.
think people feel that way. And so if there are no further questions, and there are many thank yous and love all the feedback, I turn it back over to you, Dean Kuhn, to take us home.
All right. Thank you, John. What a great panel. Sandy, Amy, Claire, Benjamin, Trinity, Maria, you guys rocked it. Oh my God. Are you sure you're undergrads or recent undergrads? Man, I wish I could have been so articulate at age, whatever. Yeah, super great class, y'all. Honor students out there. Make sure you apply. We do take applications because Sandy is interested in your response to the question, not because we want to exclude people, but we want to see the kinds of minds even before we meet them at the table, right? Mm-hmm. So Dr. Treat is happy to take email questions about the class. And yeah, wow. Any final words of creativity from our rock star panel?
Go forth and be messy.
And I have put the link to the course page with all of the time and date information, as well as a link to the course application in the chat for anyone who's interested. And I will also put in my email if anyone has follow-up questions.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, wonderful job, y'all. Really appreciate you taking the time to beam in here and talk to what was clearly a super engaged audience. So really appreciate it. And have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, honors
Thank you
college
all.
too.
Thanks,
Bye,
honor
everybody.
students. You're the best.
Oh boy, you're not kidding.